Welcome to the show, Tristan. How you doing, bud?
I'm good today. How are you this morning?
Good. Now you just celebrated an anniversary, right?
Yeah, I just hit 3 years sobriety, complete sobriety.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Congrats. 3 years is a huge accomplishment. What is your sober date exactly?
It's right about, what did that hit? What is it? It says 16th,
Today's the
15th,
16th that we're
15th.
recording.
Yep. So it was the 14th. I'm so sorry. I just moved and
Yeah,
our
yeah.
stuff's out there. But yeah, it's right about there. That's the. I say that because it depends on how that goes. Because the night I got sober was the last time that I went into the drunk tank, and it's a whole
Everybody
mess. And
uses, yeah, it's
mhm,
confusing. Like when your
mhm,
sober
mhm.
date starts, it's kind of like a weird thing. Does it start after I have 24 hours or just start right away? And
Yep,
so I know what you mean. So November 14th, 2023.
yep.
What was going on November 13th into 14th that you decided that I'm gonna hang it up?
I had been on a long-term realm in that time or period where you kind of do that thing where you kind of fooling yourself. Like I'll ease up, and I won't do this, I won't do this. But we got this on lock. We got that taken care of. And for the brevity of that answer that question, in the midst of that, I had gotten back into like workouts and really trying to put that effort in. But it took one night out after a couple months of just going out with some friends to celebrate. We have an open house where I live, where downtown opens up. See a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while, and the biggest thing I learned in my sobriety journey and seeing other people and how they interact and like having those full circle moments is that you have those things where people think they're doing you a favor or think that they're having fun with you. So like a drink turns into this drink, or a shot turns into this shot, or oops, sorry, here's another one. And that's the kind of thing it is. And before you know it, you're not thinking it's your troop. And we had gotten that night, went up to the car to grab some stuff and got popped by some cops because it's an easy. Where I live, there's just bars in every corner. I mean, there's literally one across from like the courthouse than the jail. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So it's just so easy. It's like Christmas to them. Some of these nights, like New Year's, Thanksgiving. Some of these things, these events, and just that wrong place, wrong time. And I mean, there's no way, absolutely no way you can try to be like, no, I'm definitely, in a even sober, decent to sober mindset
yeah,
because we just, gone out. So that led to that. I, did the thing that a lot of people I'm sure have done in those situations. You spend the night in jail and you have to air out essentially. Um, and that's not the first time that's happened. So just waking up that morning, there's always that just such disappointment in yourself when you wake up and you know where you're at and you're like, fuck.
yeah,
And knowing that that is not that's happened before, and knowing that like you just now I could say it's easy about as far as like being about it, not just talking about it, but you really are this just walking example of that cyclical failure.
yeah,
Eat, sleep, repeat. And so if you don't do something about it and you keep talking about it, you're not going to help yourself. So at that point, I knew I was going to have, go through the system, like date arraign, all that stuff. And you hear about all of these potentials that could happen because they try to give it to you straight. Like you could get this, you could get this. It's scary sounding, especially, hearing it again and be like, God damn, like tired of like restarting essentially, for the long short of that. And so it just you only have so many times. That's the thing I thought about. So many times where people care about you, so many times where people are there for you. Most people aren't sets of stairs, and even ones that are there, like seeing the things that people can put other people through. That's not who I am, and that's not what I'm about. And it was just like kind of a do or die situation there because you know when does it come along where I get hurt, somebody gets hurt, you get bad news, or you end up in a more serious situation. So it
yeah.
was that
And
time.
it's
So
that, and you're exactly right with like, how many strikes do I get? You start doing that math, like how many strikes do I get before this person, this family member, that family member, this close friend, this significant other, this girlfriend, boyfriend, how many times are they going to keep giving me a chance to like not fuck up? And all the ultimatums you get that you blow through anyway. And like I've been there. Like I feel like, I can relate totally to that. Where are you from? You said there's bars all over. Where are you from, dude?
From Michigan, a town called Petoskey.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, Michigan definitely is. I've only been to Michigan once, and it was to Ann Arbor and to see a football game. I'm not sure. Are you on the Michigan State side or Michigan University of M?
We're way up in the north, so like Michigan's split in two, and you have that bridge in between.
Near the
I'm
UP.
like right at the tippy top. Yeah.
So
So like,
you're near
it's cliche to do this, but we're way up here.
Yeah,
As far as I
one of
go.
my first guests early on. I mean, I'm 255 episodes into this, and one of my first guests, he was from the UP, the Upper Peninsula. Like I know you know what the UP is, but for
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that don't know, from around Michigan, the UP is the Upper Peninsula, where it's that little like island off of Michigan that's kind of over Illinois, right? It's kind of a little bit closer to Illinois where it like sits, and he said it was crazy because it's such like a seasonal area where there's bars
Oh
all over,
yeah.
and like there's like
Yep.
no cars, just bikes, and you know um so it must be cold as fuck there then where you live.
Yeah. We had seasonal is the best way to describe it. I mean, if you look up Petoskey on Google, or you look it up anywhere, it's literally fudgy paradise. We call it, well, we say we're fudgies, but we mean tourists.
Okay.
Like I work in a tourist town. Like it's
Yeah,
legit, just like set up for, come spend your money, come here, and they tout on, and it's a beautiful place, but it comes at that price of like, it's that summertime, so they're trying to get people into like, it's like so much around, that scene. It's kind of crazy.
so exactly like what I was saying with the UP, where it's seasonal, where like it's either a ghost town or there's mayhem all over,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yep. And right now you're winter time in the summer town, and it's it's you either it's kind of a funny half and half, because it's either like there's events, music, da 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 going on, and your people are out, drinking and doing whatever, or there's nobody here and there's nothing to do, so you're out drinking. It's almost the same as like, again, when I say people fool themselves, are like, I'm having a bad day, I'm gonna go for a drink. I'm having a good day, I'm gonna celebrate, I'm gonna go for a drink. Like you kind of find yourself
A
tucked right in
reason.
that pocket of like, you're just looking for a reason to go do that stuff. The drinking supersedes the event. People like, hey, is there going to be drinks there? Is there going to be this there? And like, well, yeah, and like, all right, come in,
Yeah.
and that's
My thing
that's how
was
that.
always then my favorite team won, I'm gonna celebrate. My favorite team lost, I'm pissed.
Yeah,
Either way, I'm gonna be using or drinking.
yeah,
Um, and most likely using or drinking while that event is happening. Um, Now have you lived there your whole life?
no. I'm from Michigan. We bounce around a whole lot. Born in Traverse City, which is probably about an hour away from where I'm at now. I ended up here through college because right about like, I want to say, between 2008 and 2010, there's just an awful like, uh, what's the word I look for? Just like economic crash. You know, just a
Recession.
recession. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, jobs rough, things rough, and I figured if I'm going to try to do anything and switch this up, college was a good opportunity at the time. I got Pell Grants, things like that. So
Yeah.
that's what
You
brought me
must be
here, and
around
that's where
my
I
age.
stayed.
You must be around my age. I'm 39. How old are you?
I'm 41. Yeah.
41. Yeah,
So
exactly.
84. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're around my, with, being an adult, over 18, over in your 20s when the recession hit and people scramble, and,
Hmm.
I know I was living on my own by 1920,
Yep.
so 2005, 2006, and so I remember when the recession hit and I had my own apartment by myself and trying to like figure shit out on my own without having like to just live at home with mom and dad, and having that, I don't want to say luxury, but it's more of a convenience of not worrying about the food being in the fridge when you live with mom and dad, and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
Right. There's at that point I had a government contracted job, and I could, I can't talk about the specifics, but like the going is good.
mhm.
And but one of the things that in all those contracts they have is like they can pull out anytime, and so that's what they did during that time. So you go from, I was working like 410s, and all the overtime you could get, and you do whatever you want, and even at that point it's a different pay scale than now, but like money was good, job, house, car, girlfriend, da da da, and like overnight that changed, and that definitely kind of led into the first bouts of like serious, drinks to be had and things to do, because that's a not just life changing, but like world changing
Yeah,
overnight.
yeah, it happened so quick, dude. Like next thing you know, real estate, rentals, like everything was just fucked. Jobs, like I worked at Best Buy at the time as a manager when the recession hit, and I just remember how slow our business got. And people coming in, trying to apply for credit cards every day because they didn't have the money in their account to buy a TV if their TV broke. People weren't coming in to just spend money willy nilly, because that wasn't the case back then. For the younger people watching or listen, no, not listening anymore. I just do video now, but for the younger people watching, like 2008, it was like September 2008, all the way up through easily 2010, like jobs were scarce. Like it was it is what it is now. If we've kind of reverted back, we kind of reverted back to what it's like now. But it was a lot different feeling back then. I remember just the shock that I felt of just, and ironically, it's when my addiction started. I started drinking at 12, and that's when my first alcoholism started. But my first addiction to opiates started October 2008, and kind of, born in that, kind of depression era of things and where I was at in my life at 22. What was it like growing up for you, Tristan? So you said you bounced around a lot. Like, do you have any brothers or sisters, single parents, like parents married? Like, what was that like growing up? That dynamic.
Oh yeah, growing up was kind of crazy. I didn't know about some of the details of growing up until I was like 13, when my mom thought I was old enough to be able to handle that sort of news. But I grew up with a half brother, and we love each other. There's sometimes I think that if we didn't have each other, we wouldn't have like
Yeah,
survived, or like at least found the good moments sometimes within that. Because not that it was like all just all woe and all like bad shit, but like our mom's, my mom had me when she's 19. Um, I was adopted by my half brother's dad, like when my brother was born, so it became his child, and we grew up kind of between the two of them. Um, like she had us a little bit, but then they like joint custody, and then like he joined the army, so like we're over there every other weekend, and our mom, just does stuff like take the child support and go buy who knows what. I never ask specifics because my mom lives in that kind of like ear, fingers in ears. Like if you talk to her now about it, that's part of one of the biggest things we have tough time with, is just trying to get her to talk about it. Nope, you're fine, everything's fine. And you're like, no, it's not. But
yeah.
we
So
bounce around a lot because I'm
let me
sorry.
try to work through this real fast so I get it right in my head. You're born to your mom 1984. Your mom's 19, and
Yep.
then she meets a guy who then adopts you. Like
Uh,
your mom and the guy get together, and then he
my
becomes your
real dad had a off on again relationship with another lady, and I have
okay,
another half brother I've never met, and
okay,
he didn't want anything to do with me because he's trying to get back together with this lady. They're
yeah,
like they fight, they break up. He got my mom since like a prom night video. Like they got together one night. She got pregnant with me. He didn't want anything to do with that. He threatened. These are some of the things I found out later on through her. Threatened to like take care of it if she didn't, and she was able to kind of get out of that situation. And then she dated it, whatever. But like right about 2 years or so later, she met my adopted dad and my brother, and he adopted me. I became part of their family,
okay,
and that's where that part comes in.
okay. How much?
Yeah,
What's the age difference between your brother and you?
right about 2 years.
Okay,
I'm May '84. He's August '86.
okay, all
Um,
right. So
and
he's 2 years
so
then.
yeah, right about
And
2 years.
is
And
that
we
your
grew
mom's?
up.
That's your mom's son.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so your mom
Yep.
has you and him, and then
Yep.
you grew up
Different dads.
different dad. You never
Yep.
really met your dad, but you grew up as this adopted dad's
Yep.
son. Okay, and you
Yep.
called him dad or whatever you called him,
Yep,
but
yep. And I didn't know about any of this half brother business, none of this stuff until I was about like, I think 12, 13, when she thought that I could maybe handle that stuff.
Yeah.
which is kind of an insane world. Again, another
Yeah.
shakeup. But
And I will want to get to that part too.
hmm
So now you're growing up at 2 with now a younger brother. You're just born. I'm born in '86 too. So your brother's got a couple months on me. So you're growing up with this younger brother, baby brother, and this guy who you thought was dad because you're 2 years old. So like you're oblivious at 2 as to like,
hmm
who your dad really is or was at that point. It's just some guy that you see every day, and why wouldn't it
hmm
be
Right,
um,
exactly.
and especially if that's what you're told. How was it growing up for like the first 10 years? Like, what was that, family living situation? Like, was it moving around a lot then, or was that later
Yeah,
on?
we moved around a lot to keep it to the first 10. But that was actually kind of like that up through like high school, or middle school, I should say. My mom's a serial dater, so you see a lot of people coming in and out of the house. This is my friend so and so. This is my friend so and so. That sort of thing. Getting not pawned up, like a lot of babysitters, a lot of different people like that. And to be fair in the mix, our mom, within not making best decisions, doesn't have a lot of options and or resources. So me and my brother grow up and babysit ourselves a lot of the time too, being like
Oh, so
6 and 8 years old.
your mom and your adopted dad never really were in a long-term relationship then.
No, they were split up. They were married and divorced pretty close after that. Yep.
Okay, but
So
that's why you said you would spend weekends with him
yeah,
because you would go there
yep.
with your little brother to this dad's house for like the weekend and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. Yeah, that's how the joint custody worked. And then during the summer, we might, go a couple weeks. Um, because putting two and two together, she'd never say that, but like I think that they like that extra like child support and that money.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a weird time, but yeah,
Well, that's
there's
a good
drugs
dude.
going on.
That's a good
Yeah,
guy, taking
yeah,
you on as his own,
yeah, yeah. I love that guy.
responsibility
He's
wise.
great. Yeah.
Like looking back at the age we are now,
hmm
to meet somebody who has a kid and then it doesn't work out with that person and then still be like, I know I still want to spend time with Tristan. I don't want
Yep.
to split up the brothers. I want them to be able to grow up together. Like that's a good dude. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I love my adopted family a lot. Yeah, they're really the kind of saving grace. Like most of the troublesome parts and the things like that are kind of like over from the
Yeah.
biological side.
Yeah.
Their mom, it's drugs, it's drinking, it's those house parties you grow up. There's a lot of abuse going on, and that's the interesting thing about drinking because like when I grew up, we see a lot of that. I mean, I remember a guy taking a punch at the wall above my brother's head and putting a hole in the wall to threaten him. It was a lot of that like, what do you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. It's a lot of the abuse, and that's part of growing up made us like appreciate each other because we had to have that because it was just like drunk parties all night, trying to sleep, being held in the back room, like hearing things crash, hearing stuff punch the wall. I mean, I remember when I was in like I think like fourth grade or so, and me and my brother came out to like one of my mom's boyfriends had like gotten drunk and like punched through a glass window and like cut a major artery in his arm, and there's like it's blood everywhere. We're rushed over to the neighbor's house. That's kind of a picture view of the worst things going on in there, and um, there's good times within there, but it was a lot of like this boyfriend doesn't work out, got to move. With this boyfriend doesn't work, got to move. We moved. I mean, I live within Michigan. I've lived most of my life, but I've lived in like every little small town. I mean, all of
Yeah.
the Central Lake, East Jordan, Traverse City. It just goes on and on. So that's kind of what it was tumultuous. A lot
Yeah.
of just as you make friends and you're doing a good thing, you're uprooted. You're just choop choop plucked to the
Yeah.
new place. And so while the abuse is there and the things like that were there, it wasn't as rampant as just like the uprooted nature of like no consistency, nothing
Yeah.
to like build towards. You're kind of like, what does this matter? For a little while,
Yeah. And
and
this
that's
is
kind
the
of what childhood
90s.
was.
This is the 80s and 90s where like once you move a town over to go to a new school, there's no talking to those friends you already made in the other school. Like,
hmm
like my son's 11 and he changed schools, but he can still like communicate. And all we did was move across town, but it's still a different like school district. And he's still able to be in contact with those kids from the other school because like Roblox and like, all those like
Yeah.
gaming, you know what I mean? Like all the games
hmm
that are out there where they can, still be friends on the games and talk to each other, Minecraft and shit like that. and still be friends with each other and talk, and he has a cell phone he can text with, and that shit wasn't in a thing, make landline phones. That's all we had, and we had to share them with the whole family. And if you're constantly moving, the numbers are changing, and it's just,
Yep.
did you have anybody from that time period of like adolescence, like before 10, all that moving, like friends besides your brother that like you can say you're still friends with today or for a while that you remain contact with, or no?
No.
No, okay.
Nope. It wasn't until, end of middle school, my mom met a dude that for some time that was a pretty good and solid guy. So from like the end of middle school up to graduation, we kind of like were in one spot in one
Oh,
house essentially. And that was the first time we had like a sort of stability. So people from that era, definitely, but people from like way back when,
yeah.
um, they might have touched base. You might see them from time to time, but like nobody routinely in contact with. No.
Yeah. No, I could see, like I'm friends with people still to this day from first grade and kindergarten. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's pretty crazy to think about, because like I was very blessed and lucky that I grew up with, parents that stayed together, my entire life till the day my dad died. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
my parents had me at 22, and I talked to my mom earlier. I'm still close with my mom. Like, and I'm just very lucky that I grew up in the dynamic I grew up in. I mean, I've lived in 36 different addresses, but 34 of them were on my own accord. You know what I mean? Like, I
Hmm.
grew up in one place, and then we moved when I was 6 to the next town over, and we stayed there for like 13 years. That's the Fourth Ave sign I have behind me. I grew up on Fourth Ave in this small town called Mount Ephraim, New Jersey, and 1 square mile town. Everyone knows everyone, and I lived there 6 to 18, and so I was able to go to grade school, middle school, high school, and then when I graduated high school, my family moved to Massachusetts, and then I went with them. And a few years ago, no shit, man, it's like a decade ago now. Man, time flies. I
Uh
was
huh.
I was on Snapchat, and a friend of mine from growing up works for the town, and like still does. And he had posted a picture of a pile of street signs. I guess they were replacing all the street signs in town. And I was like, yo, bro, look for Fourth Ave and grab that out for me, please. And he did. He found it in the rubble. So I've had that sign, in all my offices, because it's the only stability I've had in my life was that 12 years. Like, I even have
Yeah.
it tattooed on my arm too. Like, I brought the sign with me to the tattoo artist, and I was like, I want you to like fuck up the tattoo as much as weathered as the street sign is. I don't want to be a perfect street sign. I want it to look like it's a weathered street sign. And he nailed it. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those like imperfect perfect tattoos, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
Uh so now you said in middle school your mom met a guy that kind of gave you some stability, you said, right?
Yeah.
How long did you stick around in that town for?
That was end of middle school, so like seventh grade going into eighth, up through graduation. So it was a pretty good chunk of time to be able
A
to like
solid 5 years, yeah.
yeah build with people, and from there, it was a thing where it was like that's where it started falling because once you graduate, it's like, are you going here? Are you doing this? They were very like this thing, like you can't just stay here,
Yeah.
and that's where stuff started to get weird because I was also in like coming into that time was a super strange moment because you're graduating, which is a big change. You're trying to get into what real life looks like for you. So like, I went and stayed with my grandma for a little bit, because she's trying to help out at a job over there where she was doing like some stuff, and like back to my house for like a quick minute to try that out. But like, just always that same constant thing of like, once we graduated, it was kind of like that's where you're like really on your own and trying to figure it out because we never really lived with parents past like graduation like hit, and they're just kind of like is like hey, figure it out. If you want to do any military action, and hell no, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
um because he was like in the service and that sort of thing, so that's where that started to clash, and that's why I say like pretty solid guy through the growing up, but like that's where it's had just been based on like beliefs and stance of like, like it was just one of those things where that was a firm kind of hard thing for him. So not to say we weren't in and out of there, but like, and then at the same time, I was like, had the first real relationship I ever had or felt like, it's like that lovesick feeling of like with this person I'm not. And that's a whole long conversation itself. But between that going on, it was really a time to just like get out of there. And actually, by heading over to my grandma giving me that opportunity, it was adopted, family again coming in the clutch because there's a big difference to me between like living with and or helping with family members and or something like that versus living off of them, and that's something I've
Yeah.
never done. And so that's wild to me to see certain things be the way they are. But going over there was kind of a nice help that wasn't quite what we needed, and I was still clunky at figuring it out. But it allowed me to, grab a car, get a job, and start doing something
Yeah.
um, constructive, and get out of there and get my head out of some of the situations that had, flared up there. Small town kind of
Yeah. That
shit
makes
that pops off. Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So like the abuse you kind of grew up with earlier in your days were like more verbal, hearing yelling, that guy putting his fist through a window, which is traumatic, seeing all that kind of blood as a young age, or, punching. You said people would punch holes through walls, or you would.
People would. We would get, hit. I remember I used to chew my nails when I was younger, and I had my hands duct taped behind my back while we took a ride to be like, this will maybe break you from it. So like, it was verbal and it was physical, but it was also like mental stuff, just all sorts
Yeah.
of like weird shit that gives you had a weird perspective on like what acceptance and what love and that things like, and that comes to bite me as an adult, just trying
Yeah.
to figure it out.
So
Um,
whose idea was it to put your duct tape your hands behind your back so that you wouldn't chew your nails? Should I chew my
that
nails for 37 years?
that was the same boyfriend that had punched a hole through the wall, the glass he saw.
He sounds like
Um,
a great guy.
to
Yeah.
me, like in these stories, I feel like names don't matter. That dude got his,
No,
at
yeah,
some point, blah blah blah. But like the stories are still there. But like the names and times have passed, and I'm well beyond that. But for sharing's sake, it's the same guy that did that. He was a real awful dude. He's probably like one of the worst ones. There's like of them, I think of two growing up that were really like hands on and like just kind of inappropriate in those situations. And like there's
yeah,
points growing up where I feel like just short of like it's like slight lines of like sexual abuse and shit that go on, just being like, I don't
yeah,
know, the way you're handled, the way they budge in on situations, the way they just don't care. There's no privacy, there's no care, and so that stuff growing up, and it just, I don't know, it's all sorts of like rounds of like different abuse. Kind of gives you just like a twisted view of like what
yeah,
appropriate childhood looks like, I guess.
yeah, and how they would try to step in as a father figure, male figure
hmm
in their life,
Oh
but
yeah,
they,
some of these dudes were barely meeting, and they're already like hands on and just like like I said, it's like that's a cliche thing a lot of men, a lot of males deal with, but it's so true. It's just like be tough, be a man, and like that was probably the time you got it the most was like if you're crying or like upset about it, and you're like, no, toughen up, you're a man, be a man,
yeah,
just makes it worse.
yeah, it does. And I had like at my 11-year-old's, my stepson, I've been in his life since he was 5, and we didn't even meet for the first like 4 or 5 months into seeing my now wife. Because we didn't want, him to meet a guy until, we knew we were going to be something. And, we would only spend time together when he was at his dad's house so that there was no like guy in the apartment when he woke up that he didn't know. And, we really like took it easy in that kind of respect because we didn't want to confuse the kid. And even now I let my wife take the reins on punishments. I mean, I'll chime in,
hmm
with what my idea of like a punishment, but I'll never give it out myself. I'll when we're having a conversation with our son, my wife and I will talk it through before we sit down our son, or we'll text each other while it's happening, like, hey, this is what I would say, this is I would want to do this, like take the game away, take a video game away, take YouTube access away,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
hmm
But I've never even raised my voice at them, let alone yell or punch some shit or whatever. I'm gonna jump around real quick because I'm
That's
curious of
okay.
this.
Yeah.
Then we'll go back to then. you as an adult, have you ever dated or been with somebody that already had a kid?
No. There's close times. As I say, some of them I respect in the idea that I've dated a couple people with kids, but they kind of do the same thing you're talking about, where, and that's totally respectable. If there's one thing I got from growing up like that, as far as it goes to this point, I think that's so respectable, and I think that's so important that, like, growing up and knowing what that's like to be like, boo, boo,
Yeah.
boo, this person, this person, this person. I never pressured anybody I've ever dated like that. Where there's been a couple people that I've dated, but I haven't met kids, or I don't know where that lies. And part of that is my own thing, and maybe there wasn't the trust there. I don't know, but they were respectful enough to be like, hey, if we date, at least for now, I want to keep it like we go out to dinner, we go out to do these things, or go, to my place, or whatever that looks like. But we didn't, that was like during like, like same thing I said earlier with they have certain visitations or certain custodies. Like the kid might be off to their dads or whatever, and they have some time to hang out or whatever. So I truly respect that, and I think that's such an important thing to do, to be like, unless I'm sure about this, I'm not bringing you around this
Yeah. And
my
that was a
children. I care
mutual
about them.
agreement when my wife and I met. We met on Tinder like a lot of people do these days. And because I got into recovery April 2018, and I waited like 8 months before I started dating,
Mhm.
and maybe six. But either way, it was at least 6 months. My rule to myself was I did not want to like meet any kids right away. Me being 31, 32 years old at the time, I was 32, and I didn't want to meet somebody. Not that I had anything wrong. I still dated women that had kids from previous relationships, but I made a point to be like, I don't want to meet you and your kid.
Yeah,
Like I want to spend time with you when you have time and talk to you whenever you want to talk, whether you're with the kid or not. But I want to make sure we're a thing before I'm introducing your kids' lives, because I don't want any, and not that I grew up with that, seeing it firsthand. Is just like I'm trying to meet you and get to know you, and not all of a sudden be part of a family. You know what I mean? Like I'm new in recovery. I'm trying to respect my recovery. And it's a lot as it is just to date somebody new, let alone to get involved with being a father figure to somebody right off the bat also. So like that was kind of, I mean, I dated a girl for like 7 months before I met my wife, and um she had two kids, and I never even met her kids, the entire time. We hung out when she would get done work for a couple hours until like she had to pick him up from like daycare, or like on weekends sometimes her mom would babysit and we would hang out. Like that was it, and we're still friends to this day 7 years later. We still talk here and there, maybe once twice a month. We still check in. We're good friends, but yeah, I never met her kids. It's just something I never want to confuse anybody with. Now, so that's interesting. I wanted to see if that you ever had that dynamic. Now, going back, when were you introduced to drugs or alcohol, and what came first? Like, was it weed or alcohol
um,
first?
it would have been alcohol is
Okay.
probably the biggest one. Weed, something that I think like everybody's had, in high school and that sort of thing, but that never really stuck with me. And the same with drugs. Never really been drugs have never really been part of my life. I've tried, this or that, mushrooms and coke at some
Yeah.
point, but that's never been anything more than just like, well, that was that, and it's literally out there. And but alcohol was probably a big one where. Um, was weird about it is growing up like around that situations. I knew I never want, there's not that perpetual motion of like, well, I went through it, you had to go through it. I'm very much the opposite of like, I hope nobody has to go through any of that stuff. So for a long time, honestly, alcohol wasn't even part of the equation, because I thought like that made these people do these things, or that was, every time I'm around this stuff, alcohol's involved, and so I really thought that was it. But I learned, later on that bad people are bad people, and
Yeah.
just enhances, how those people are. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until probably like 22, 23 where we seriously went out for the first time after that huge economic recession
Yep.
hit, where I had a girlfriend at the time that we were, I mean, it was a really weird, I mean, like within one weekend, it was almost like Had a girlfriend I was separating from, and we'd agreed to like take that month to get separate and do the right things. But then I get a message from my friend being like, "Hey, dude, they're clearing her house out right now," and she like moving while I'm at work. And so that was a rough time. Then like the laugh happens, like, and I'm like looking for a place to live, job, like all this stuff, like at one time. And my friend essentially at one point was like, your birthday's come around to Ben. That was also kind of the fun kicker to the whole thing as well. But like, let's get together and like maybe have a safe spot, and we can show you that like that stuff isn't so bad. And if you're down, we'll just show you a good weekend. And that's kind of what that turned into. So I realized at that point, people are enhanced by how they are through alcohol and that sort of thing, and it doesn't necessarily make people bad. So that kind of started that realm of like, okay, drinking's cool and acceptable, and that's probably the first time I would say that I actually had a view of like that being okay.
Okay, so
When I wish I wouldn't have.
you didn't really drink much in high school then.
No, nope,
Okay, not
nope,
really a party or anything like that. Like,
nope. Get together, friends, you have fun, but like nobody, everybody was always like pretty safe about this. Or like I said, there weeds popped out around here, festival parties, that sort of thing. But nobody's like busting off with like crazy stuff or like troublemaking or like I don't know.
So what did you? So like, what did you do during high school since you had stability in like your housing situation for the first time? How did you spend your middle school, high school years in that stable lifestyle? Like for me, I started drinking in sixth grade, really. Like, so I was drinking constantly throughout. Like, were you into skating? Like, I want to take a
Yep,
shot.
exactly. Yep, skating, biking. We'd bike everywhere, riding trails. I mean, get on a bicycle and ride around like all day. And where I lived, like that really is another thing you hear a lot, but it's true. Like parents didn't care as long as you'd be like, "I'll be here. I'm gonna do this." They kind of knew where you were at, or like figured where you were at, and you're just gone for like however long. Either with girlfriends of the time or just friends. But like I was always like that kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was really it.
Were you against drinking at the time? Like,
Oh yeah, very much. There was a point where
kids
I would say that you'd even be like straight edge, like very proud, like straight edge kind of to it, especially the music and the shows we'd start to go to. You kind of get that like very anti. Yeah.
I remember that term, straight edge.
Yep. So for a while that was kind of like the thing, and I felt like there's a lot of that teen angst within that, so that kind of like fell to the wayside. But yeah, for a while you're very like you think you know everything. You're very loud and proud about like this is my conviction.
I don't drink. I don't do
what I do. Yeah, I don't smoke. I don't whatever because I saw it do stuff to people. So like fuck me up and like I ain't about that. And
yeah,
I think as I grew, my views changed like as they do, and I started to see that like it's more about the people, less about the substance, and da da da. And I unfortunately I didn't know. Like I often think a lot about how it was, not to compare it to like weird here, but it's like you're like within Jackass realm, you're either like Steve-O who started early and found his way, or you got Bam who like just didn't, and it just took an event to like switch him over, and now he's like having a hard time kind of doing it. So like I feel like relatable, not quite in a full sense, but like it just happened a little later in life where things started to rear their heads, like relationships and things like that. So for a while, off and on, there's periods where things are really good and really happy, and then there's periods where like there's a party I went to at some point, and I couldn't even tell you what really happened, but like that's one of those like traumatic events that feels like kind of switch your view on things when you see them. Is like I remember going to a party and like definitely having my drink, like a field party, and definitely having my drink. Something was done to it, altered, and passing out and waking up to like pants off and people laughing, and then it just. So I, to this day, I couldn't tell you how this, but I never hung out in that situation again with those people again. But those sort of things start to twist your view. So I got a lot of views on like what love and actually was. So like just acceptance of being like during that start where I started to drink, it really quelled into the idea that I'll go hook up. You go here, drink, you go here, hook up. And like my views on like things really started to, I think at that point, that's when it started to spiral where like that's just such a part of it. You don't think about it. and hooking up
Yeah.
is like, oh, hey, I'm not lonely and somebody's here with me and blah blah blah, and like that, felt like that's not a real relationship, and that's not real love, and that's not real acceptance, and that's not really figuring out things in a way. You're just so deep into like escape. It's
Yeah.
sad.
And
Yeah,
you made a great analogy with the Steve-O Bam, because I just double checked it. Steve-O's been sober now 17 and a half years.
that's awesome. I love keeping up with what he does now, and he is such a. People can say what they want about Steve-O, but as far as like uh, a person that has turned it around and continues to be loud about it and continues to show you that you can still have fun, you can still do these things, and you do not need like these things to do that.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It
Yeah.
really, that
I
sounds maybe funny to say, but like he's an immense amount of it's just good
Do you watch
within
his
that.
podcast?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yep, not everyone, but yeah.
His his co-host Skinny Vinny.
Hmm.
He's been on my show twice actually.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
I
Wow.
met Vinny when I lived in LA when I first got into recovery in 2018. And Vinny was going to the same meetings I was going to. And that's when we became friends. And then well before he did, he joined up with Steve-O. He was on my show twice because his roommate was Zach Ass. Zach, the
Oh,
big
yep.
dude
Hmm.
from Zach Ass 4.
Yep.
They were roommates for a while. And I met Zach and Vinny going to the same meetings when I lived in Culver City, LA. Because when I first, I'm from South Jersey, right outside of Philly. And, I bounced around Massachusetts, North Carolina, Eastern Pennsylvania, and Los Angeles. I lived in Culver City, which is like right next to Santa Monica, Venice, near West Hollywood. It's like the west side of LA. And I loved being out there. But at the time, my dad and brother and I had a business together in the central part of Pennsylvania, like Harrisburg, Hershey. And my dad's like, hey, I kind of need you to get back here. Like, we need you. And so I moved back to there. But, Steve-O cracks me up. And I remember that he posted he shattered his ankle at one point. Vinny and I were talking about he shattered his ankle and he had to get like 20 screws in his ankle. And he posted that all he took was Advil and Tylenol for the pain because he did not want to even take a chance of a
Hmm.
relapse by putting anything into his body. He's like, so if I can get through this injury, you can get through anything,
Yeah.
with just some Tylenol and Advil. Like, you don't need the pain meds, you want them, but you don't need them. And there's a difference. And I am huge on wants and needs when it comes to being in recovery, because it goes back to 2018 when I was living out there. I bought into being in recovery. I went there on my own. No one forced me to go. I was just surrendered. I was done drinking and using by 31 and a half. I was 31 and a half, almost exactly. And I told my family, hey, and they knew I had a problem for years. Like, they're not dumb. Like, I was getting arrested and shit. Like, pills all the time. Like, they knew exactly what I was doing. They begged me to go to rehab countless times. And I just kept saying, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then finally I had one of those moments where I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I went on my own. And I chose to go to Los Angeles on my own. My mom wanted me to go to Florida because that's where everybody went. And I specifically wanted to go to LA because I didn't want to know anybody. And I wanted to be able to find myself, and I can't find myself if I'm with people that already know my backstory. I want to be able to start fresh. And so I did 26 days in rehab, and then I was in sober living. And a week into being in rehab, I met my friend Taylor, who we're still friends today. She was in Virginia, so we've actually hung out a few times since then. Ironically, she ended up dating a guy for a while that lived 5-10 minutes from me up in Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere. So we used to see each other a lot, and we're still friends. She lives in DC now, and she's finally clean and sober. But she kept relapsing, and like early on 2018. And I remember one night she got caught drinking and using, and I was outside smoking a cigarette with her, and she was getting sent back to rehab, the inpatient, and she was out there just crying. She's like, I don't get it. Like, I need to be sober. Like, I need to do this. I don't understand like why this isn't working. I need to, my family is so upset. Like, I just need to do this. And in that moment, it dawned on me for the first time. I was like, that's the difference right there. And I told her, it's like, you keep saying you need to. When you need to, you're doing it for somebody else, to appease somebody else. You're doing it for your family, your friends, for the police, whatever. The difference is why this is working for me is what I told her, is because I want this. You know, I'm not doing it for anybody but myself. I want to be clean and sober. So I'm not doing it for anybody except for what I want to do. And that's the difference between needs and wants in recovery, in my opinion, is when you self-consciously start using the word need instead of want, or want instead of need, and you can catch yourself saying it. That's when you can pick up on if you're doing the right thing or not with your program. So
Yeah,
it's interesting that you say that.
I agree. When this last time I got in trouble, it led to a lot of, you went in court, you do the things. It led to license suspension. It led to the agreement that you could kind of like expedite any trouble and show that like I got what I got is the opportunity that they thought I would be a good candidate for this thing they're trying to, like, instead of like any sentencing and any of that business. They're like, hey, for like 2 years you get in this program and you just show up, show that you're showing the meetings and show that you're doing the work, and of course you get a little community service with that and stuff. But that's where I was saying like that when I found that out, it was like hit the ground running, because like I want this, I need this, and it became from one of the worst experiences one of the best things in my life. And it's insane to watch what you're talking about, the big difference of want, need, or being made to. There's when I did that, I would call it short of like a wonderful time. I really got to grow a lot and put into motion things that I probably wouldn't have gotten to, at least that soon, that I did until I got in that program. So like by doing that and agreeing to that, and actually, that's the thing you just mentioned, like um, wanting to do it and having that option, and it just changed everything. And once you did that, the good begat more good, and once the ball started rolling, um, think about that. I don't think of this, but like what I'm saying is like within that group, it's always interesting to see people, whether it's meetings or it's stuff like that, or it's whatever. Even if something's court ordered, or even if things are whatever, you still have the choice to show up and do them. You still could be like, well, fuck this, and make it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bottom can go as deep as you want it. Like there is no, like we say rock bottom, we say stuff, but like if you want to continue to fuck up and make it worse, you can continue
Yeah.
to fuck up and make it worse. Or you can, be about it. Like I always say, like show up and show out. You be there for yourself. You can't just talk about these things. People talk so much about, well, I have this plan, I have this plan. Like, cool. And I know you can't just do things like that or like whatever, something to take steps, but fucking make it happen. And when I started doing that, it's so cool to see that, or to see that in other people that want it. But you also see the people that are like, this is bullshit. They want to do this. They want to see us fail. They want to whatever. And you're like, you're the one, continuing. And I know that
Yeah.
it's not just so cut and dry, that people do have a legit, sometimes have a legit, it's hard. But
Yeah.
I commend those people that are like that speak out to that and still say like, hey, I'm still thinking about this. Hey, I'm still whatever. That to me is improvement, because you're aware of it. They're doing what they can, and it's not as cut and dry for people to be like, okay, I'm done, quit. But for those people to still recognize that and be able to just, that's still the effort, and that's still showing up, and that's still doing the things they need to for themselves.
Yeah, I forget the name
But
of that program. I was on that program back in 2013.
for us, it's called sobriety court.
Okay,
Um,
I was on a different kind of
it's
program, but
it's
yeah,
it's kind of like, it's the thing where it's like you check in with like once a week. It's awesome. It's like a therapy session. They ask, how's everybody doing? You do the thing, you show up. You A lot of what it is about is the accountability. You're supposed to be here doing these things. They don't really, like what
yeah,
matters is that you're there doing the thing.
yeah,
Um, and that's what it's about. But making you, and for some people, it's keeping you busy, so you're not having time and or the
yeah,
ability to really think about these things. And it's awesome. But like I said, whether that was a great program to be in, and I was in that for a little bit, and I've been on my own for some significant amount of time. And like, man, I tell you, it's the more days you rack up and the more you put behind you, uh, it just works so well. And I always say, like, where I'm at, not everybody's, going to come with me, because people have a chance to grow with you as they do, and or people have a chance to accept your new changes. But there's been some friends and some people, and especially family, just because they're family, like, none of this stuff matters for anybody trying to get in your way of your goal, of
Yeah.
your sobriety goal and your boundaries. And the best thing that this has given me is the boundaries, because within the whole time I've had trouble finding like acceptance of myself, love of myself. I'm living in a place that feels like a slow noose. Like there's situations, there's places you're at that just like that tightening every so often, where you just like, I need out of here, and you need to do the things, and sometimes you don't know it until hopefully it's not too late. And luckily for me, in these mostly situations, it wasn't too late, and I try to be there to tell that to anybody else, perpetuate that nature of like, you got to be about it and see about it. But like, a lot of us are out here to to show you that you can do it.
Yeah.
And
And you said an
um
interesting thing that like it reminded me of I haven't said this in a while, but rock bottoms. I have an opinion on rock bottoms, which I like to remind people, that are watching in case you're new to the show. But I've said it a dozen times probably over the last 4.5 years. But in my opinion, everyone has the same rock bottom. We all have different lows in our time in addiction, whether it's getting arrested, getting divorced, getting, a drunk tank, or, DUIs, or, we all have different lows, being homeless, where we're okay with being at that low in our addiction. But your rock bottom sometimes isn't even going to hit even until you're clean, even while you're clean. I know people that are clean in NA that haven't hit their rock bottom yet because they haven't truly surrendered to the point of work in a recovery program,
right.
and, being consistent until you hit that point of like, okay, I surrender. I want to be fully part of recovery. You're not at your rock bottom yet. Your rock bottom is that day that you can't go any further in your low and you start to inch your way out again and start to work towards being out of that hole and into recovery, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. What I
So,
mean by mine is just that, like, it continue to go
yeah,
lower if you want,
yeah,
and there's
exactly.
no bottom. But it's, yeah, like you said, not until you decide and actively pursue that change to
Yeah.
start inching up. Yep.
And so 23, like I said, we bounce around. So 23, you go through a bad breakup, the recession's going on. Now you're up and moving again, like you had been your whole life. Um, and that's when you first start really drinking.
Yeah, that point, it still was just kind of like here or there, friends, parties. I started to hit college up at that point, and even though I'm a little bit older, I'm still like mid, young 20s.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people right about my age that live in that area, and I stay in the dorms because I don't have the parents to back that stuff up. I don't have that sort of thing. So that point, from when I graduated, that first year is kind of a jumbled mix up, but like, you're pretty much on your own from there, and you're figuring it out. And so that's kind of what I was doing, making decisions based on what either felt right, or was right, or I didn't care at that time. And so through college, that was a pretty cliche existence of just, we partied up, you do your things, and eventually, college got to the point where, like, as that was wrapping up, we bought our first, me and a girl I was dating bought our first real apartment outside of that, and that became a party house, like absolutely just jammed, trashed house. Not broken, but I just mean, like, you're always cleaning up bottles, you're always cleaning up after the last party, you're always having people over, and it feels like that's kind of where the high is peaking for me as far as that goes, because it feels like you have a lot of friends and a lot of people, and that sort of stuff isn't starting to hit you in that negative way yet.
It's the
It's not
fun part.
until,
It's the
yeah,
fun
exactly. It's the
part
fun
where
parts.
you don't think you're doing anything wrong. This is me just enjoying life. This is me in my
Yep.
20s. And
So absolutely, to speed up into the point where it starts to do that, is that, like, by this point I still live in Petoskey. I still live in these spots, but this apartment we get, after that we move once more, and that's the apartment I was at for like good 8 years, and that's kind of where I call the slow noose, was where that's where things started really kind of like flip. And I wouldn't even, it's kind of like how I said earlier, I didn't know about certain things until, like, I was able to live a few a full view world perspective. Her mom told me some of these things I didn't know. I didn't know some of these things were as bad as they were until after I had a chance to get sober and reflect on those things. There's lots of full circle moments like that where um, I start to become, you're out drinking and it's getting out of hand. Like, and it starts getting out of hand at like certain shows we go to and start things where like I realize you're doing dumb shit where you can see people are like embarrassed, and that's kind of the first sign of like shit starting to slip. And in failed relationships where like, I never am able to commit to these certain things. I always find this thing of like my self worth is low. Like these things start to dip in. Their drinking goes up, self worth goes low, acceptability of myself goes low. That's where like boundaries are important to me now, because back then I had boundaries for my friends and family. Like, don't talk bad about these guys. Don't whatever. These people are wonderful. I'd never talked to anybody the way I talked to myself, essentially.
Yeah.
And my care just doesn't get to, I just don't, it just gets worse and worse. And so that starts to show, and those cracks start to show, and you're not as fun as you are, or if you're having fun you think you are, you're not. And it starts to become the people like, just because your friends say they're not bothered doesn't mean that like it's not cool, or just because they say it's cool, I mean, doesn't mean that it's cool. Like, it's fine, man. Like, but there's just a lot of those. You wake up, you got text damage to talking damage, figure out what did I do last night, a lot of that just blurry shit. And that's where you really start to see it come out of hand. And then eventually I even have some friends that are like trying to move on kind of the same way I'm going. That's why I say full circle moments. But back then, where they're like, yo, I hope you're good, but I'm out. I can't hang out in this situation. I can't be around you in this situation. And that's what that's what a lot of people joke about, is like, they call it like, I say, I hate this phrase whole phase, and I hate this phrase like blackout phase, and I hate this phrase like whatever. But that's where I had started to find myself at like my mid to late 20s, into like early 30s. Is this just like brew, witch's brew of like, just care is low, um, commitment is not there. I figure if I ruin things before people have a chance to do it, you can't hurt me. But I'm just hurting myself in those realms, and I've lost out on a lot of. I always say that like, while I don't try to live in the past, I'll be forever scarred by the love that I destroy. And during this time, I did a lot of that. There's a lot of damage caused by a lot of that stuff, and since then have been able to right these things. But that doesn't mean these people forgive you, and it doesn't mean you're friends now. It doesn't mean that like, hey, we get to hang out now. But it feels a lot better to acknowledge the damage and do what repair can be done. And
Yeah.
talk to these people. So I'm in this apartment for a good sum of like 7 or 8 years, and that's really where I live. And that's kind of like, there's a lot within that, but it's just a blackout part of like going, because I live right downtown, or close to right downtown. So it's easy to just pop over there, find somebody to hang out with and or hook up with, and it goes on like that. And you run into a lot of people that are doing the same shit you are. So like, that misery loves company happens, and you're not doing anything for yourself. And that's why I say the term slow news. Eventually it comes to a point where like depression hits hard, things get so bad. And I've been a drunk tank once for just being out with our friends at a birthday party, and um, you go sit a night in and you're out, and that happened like once or twice. And those things are just getting worse. And it's a story that a lot of people hear, that like, when you're not actively changing that, you're not actively trying to fix that, it's going to continue to do so. That's that bottom, just boop, boop, boop. Your new levels of acceptance, kind of like you mentioned, is becoming better. Oh, that's fine, I can do that. And you deflect. Oh my God, or you do get good at fucking deflecting, passing the blame. Oh, that was just, we were just drinking. It's just this. It's just this. Nobody is that serious. It's not going to be a big deal. But it is. It's a huge fucking deal, and that's probably the worst part you can do. It's fooling yourself, man. You can't fool yourself. You absolutely you can't fool yourself, and you're not fooling anybody at all that's around you, because those guys know, and those guys want better for you, and they they try, and and you're not ready for that stuff, and that's a big problem too. And that's where that thing comes into, that depression sets in, and try not to like get too sad or cry here, but like it's bad to a point where like um suicide isn't even an option. It's like you care about yourself so less, and I think you heard about me talk about this when we were with sharing a story with Julianne and them. Shout out to Swift Steps, by the way. I love those guys. But you don't. There's a point where you don't even care about that. Like, I just don't care. I absolutely have zero worth. Like, even that's effort. to do that is effort. And that's truly where I started to, in a very slow motion, become aware of like where this had led, where this gets to, you know, what do I need to do to change that? And it starts with that sort of like, I don't have a specific day for that, but there's definitely a time where you're like, oh my God. And, you know, it's just like when your friends start to see that and you start to see that low where people are like, man, you just don't have any of that fun that you did. You don't have any of this, like, you're like literally going through the motions, and it becomes to a point where you're like, you're out drink, you know, you work, and then you go out drink, and then you just wake up and you get sober enough to go out and do it over again. And that's a fucking terrible existence, justifying like, you know, I never gotten to a point where like, it's not like Robert's here, but you're justifying like, well, if I move this money here, I can pay this later. If I do this here, you know, or somebody gets me this time, I'll get them next time. It's just
Yeah.
the big fucking shitty game of
Yeah.
fooling yourself and robbing yourself of years of happiness and potential, and
Yeah.
starting over and over and over.
What were how old were you? Because like I feel like those 8 years in that apartment was the longest stability you had ever had in your life, even to this day, where you lived 8 years at the same address, right?
Yep.
And
But it was the worst at the same time.
what were your ages? Like,
I want to say that was, so it was after college, so that was probably back, so you know, so later 20s to like early to mid 30s, you know.
okay.
And
Wow,
then that kind of put me into, you know, a jump, kind of where, you know, that's what I was saying, like it seems like big time jumps, but it's the same kind of shit happening within those jumps. And then
yeah.
like, you know, so I did that was 2011, so probably like almost 2000 like 18. And then
Right.
I, you know, started to try to attempt to seek some change and do whatever. And then like that even kind of bumps us into COVID, because there's still that hard dealings with that. Like there's moments where like strides are made, things are getting better, awareness is aware, but like right before we hit into COVID, like that's where depression hit again, because I got this upward momentum where me and my friend Robbie had both like knew we needed something different and needed something new, and we got an okay for an apartment. We agreed like, hey, let's be roomies and let's, you know, do this till it doesn't work, but like let's get out of this place, let's get out of this, you know, spot and get something new. And like, man, just got forward momentum. I'd booked a bunch of concerts, I'd booked a bunch of family time, and then COVID hit and just took all that away, almost potentially taking our apartment away. And then during COVID, what do you think you're doing during that time?
Getting
Exactly,
fucked
you're
up.
right back to that square one, and we're like watching Jersey Shore and drowning in the sorrows of like, you know, drink. It's just drink, and like weight gets put on. That's when I get, you know, one of the last times I got hit for another overnight, and then like from there, we live far enough out now to where like driving starts to become kind of a potentially dangerous avenue. So again, you're getting to that lower
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
And that's where I said, like, when I got in the beginning, where, you know, you're in your car and it's enough to be like, you're wasted, you're in the driver, you know, like, it's enough to them be like, hey, what are you doing there, buddy? And you can justify that however you want. You can say whatever you want, but I was there, made the choices to do the things I did to get in that spot that I was at. And those are the repercussions of what happened from there. And that's, again, another low reached. And then finally, the fooling stopped, the talk stopped, the deflecting stopped, the acceptance came in, and the ownership of what you had done and the things that had come around, it kind of started to finally take place.
Yeah. My wife and I quit drinking February 29th, 2020, 2 weeks, almost exactly 13 days before the shutdown happened, in March 2020. So, but we were still smoking weed. So we smoked a ton of weed during COVID, but luckily we had quit drinking 2 weeks before the shutdown started happening. So you had no bouts of sobriety throughout your early 30s and mid 30s, and you didn't
No,
try to, there was no like trying to get sober or any kind
there
of.
was, you know, there's like months, you'd have a couple months in. Like, I like to run, I like to be active, and there's moments where like there's like months here and there, you know, like before COVID had hit, or even before this last time I got myself into like the deepest trouble I've gotten and really took it seriously and I got sober. There's a couple months before that, so there's weeks or months or whatever, but there's always the fooling nature, like I said, that comes back to remind you. Unfortunately, it gets worse, where, you know, they joke a lot about like, you can't just say like I'm not going to drink harder liquors now. I'm going to stick to beer. I'm
Yeah.
not going to drink harder beers now, whatever. And that's the kind of fooling that would lead you back time to time. And in this last case, for example, there's bouts of sobriety, but there's always those things like, oh, this is a birthday. We can go out and do this because it's
Yep.
special. You know, you're past. Like I said, there are strides made. There are things done. I'm not gonna totally deflate myself and say that like there wasn't good stuff in there. And realization is an important one, but
Yeah.
it's not enough in these cases.
Yeah.
And it
So
took that
okay.
to
And then you had that moment that we started the show with November 14th of 2022, that you woke up in the jail cell and you were just like, I have to make a change now.
yep,
Like, because at that time you're what, 38 years old?
yeah,
30, yeah,
yeah,
38 years
yep,
old. Like, it's not cute anymore. This isn't fun.
absolutely sad,
Yeah,
fucking sad.
yeah,
Yeah, bit disappointing. It's like like you hear a lot of people like not mad at you, I'm not whatever. Like, but that's how I felt to myself. I was like, this is depressing. This is
yeah,
disappointing, and not in a depressing like before, but like an optimistic, depressing. Like, wow, we're gonna fucking not do this again.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so when you first got sober, were you into a lot of meetings? Did you get a sponsor? Like, how did that look for you in your first year of sobriety?
I actually never had a sponsor, but I had a
Which I don't
really
shame anybody for never having a sponsor.
no. I looked, but just nobody fit the bill
Yeah,
that I thought would whatever. Um, I kept the reminder in to like what we're doing, why we're doing it. I attended meetings. Yeah, in this program I was in for the first 90 days, you have to hit 5 a week, so you're at it all the time. So prevalent in your mind, just doing the things, doing the things, doing the things. Um, Meetings where I looked out to any resources that like whenever I do this sort of thing, I want to make it to where like sounds funny like enjoyable. So I searched around a ton of did a bunch of different meetings and here's what stuck with me. What places do I like? What people do I like? What am I jiving with? What am I not jiving with? What's going to help me on my way? What's going to be positive to that? Because that's where boundaries were up. So if I went to a meeting where it's a bunch of crotchety old fuckers just like going on about shit that doesn't matter, because
yeah.
you know as well as I do in some of those meetings, those old dudes, there's a lot,
The
there's a lot
the
to be learned there. But at the same time, there's a lot of like sexism and there's a lot of just different shit that are like, no, thank you, buddy. We don't talk
yeah.
to ladies like that. We don't do this to people. This ain't cool. So if I found any of that stuff happening, you're moving on to another
Yeah,
meeting.
you're so uncomfortable
Um,
because I feel like you and
exactly.
I have the same kind of principles. If we met in the Swift Steps group, which that makes me feel like you and I are the same kind of like principles of how like we want to treat others around us, how we want to be treated ourselves, how we want, if we walk into a meeting, exactly like you said, if I started hearing sexism in a meeting or talking down to women, I'm like, this is not the fucking group I'm going to get sober in. Like,
Yep.
this is not going to work out for me because I'm going to end up, butting heads with these old timers,
Yep.
and it's going to be more detrimental for my recovery than it is for theirs. I got to protect my recovery and get the fuck out of here.
So essentially, within the first year, I found a lot of things that stuck with me or worked for me, and then I kind of stuck with them and I used those as practice, and that really that foundation really helped. So there's a meditating group. When I say these next two groups, they are by definition what I'm telling you, but they're so more open than that. It's just kind of like a space to be and exist as you are because it's not defined by like NA or AA or anything like that. It's just anything you're trying to just get better at and or like here. It's kind of like that's why the Swift Steps
Yeah.
formula works so well and is so wonderful. Julianne is such a I really just can't commend her enough for like what she's created and what she's doing in that program. But locally, it's kind of similar vibes. Like I'd go to Sunday services every Sunday. It felt good. I waking up, get a coffee, I go grab a quick brunch, and I go there. But there's a place that I found through doing some of my community service where this lady owns this. It's called Chapel of the Guardian Angels, where we're at, and she's just it's so accepting and so open. It's just open to anybody that wants to like come and breathe and reset for the week. What are you thankful for? What can we do to be better? Um, it doesn't have the typical religious context of like you're only here to believe this and do this and do this and do this. It's very much just kind of very open and be like we are accepting, and I thought that was great. So that helped a lot. And then like doing yoga and like stretches and meditation and things like that just really put me in a good group with not only people that are like minded and a little more progressive as I like to be in those natures of just like punishment isn't a good way to do it. Um,
Yeah.
these are things a little more open minded in a nutshell. And it
Yeah.
just that worked really well and it just felt really good. But also by experiencing the bad stuff, that just reaffirms my boundaries because once I was able to take the boundaries I have up for the people I love and add that to myself, that was a big game changer. Um,
Yeah, you
and
have to
getting
have
the
boundaries on yourself, let alone others around you.
yep, and getting that just the acceptance of like, man, you did fuck up, but that doesn't mean that doesn't define who you are. It's who you are, not who you were. I can live by that and live by those things now and show up and be able to help out people know that, and I don't feel that I'm just saying these things and doing these things. And
Yeah.
that's very important. Acceptance
Yeah.
is a motherfucker, but goddamn, is it? That's what you need.
Yeah. I'm very big on, everybody having their own kind of program, because what works for people in AA might not be what works for people in NA. And, like my wife does recovery Dharma, and I feel like, some people just do Swift steps. Like some people just do celebrate recovery. Like some people just white knuckle it, or they go to
Mhm.
church, and I feel like I'm not here to shit on your recovery. I'm not here to tell you if you don't do AA or if you don't do NA, you're not going to stay sober or clean. Like that's not my opinion whatsoever. I have a really good friend who just left AA because she uses cannabis in her recovery because she has a lot of other like outside things going on, and she's been on this show 11 times. And she was finally like, I'm not comfortable there anymore. I got to protect my recovery and get the fuck out of there. And I was like,
Mhm.
go get out of there. Like you got to do what you got to do. So, I fully believe in protecting your recovery and not worrying about what others think of how you work it.
Yeah. No, my opinion, like what other people think of me, is not my business,
Yeah.
and it's only what I can do for me in
Yeah.
these cases.
Yeah. It's been really nice talking to you, Tristan, getting to know you.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yesterday I was going through um my list of people like that I had marked down to schedule originally. And it was a bunch of people that I missed in September for like, you and I were scheduled in September. You
Yep.
weren't able to, and then I wasn't able to. And then I talked to you, we got scheduled for this. And then I reached out to the person that was the week after you, scheduled her for a couple of hours from now. And I actually have four today. You're my first of four today.
Wow.
And all four of you guys are the first four on the top of my list from September that one of us had to change around the schedule for whatever reason at the time. So all four that I'm doing today are ones that were scheduled for the end of September originally that I'm knocking out today on this wonderful. What's the weather like for you guys? It's windy as
Snowy. We're
hell here.
getting snow.
You're getting
I'm
snow.
ready to go out now after we're done here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to a record store and get some lunch. Go crate
Nice.
digging. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it was snowing here the other day because like I'm in the middle. I live in Bloomsburg, PA, which is like southwestern of like Scranton. It's kind of like north central Pennsylvania. And it's kind of like 45 minutes from the Poconos, west of the Poconos. And so we see a lot of snow here, and it snowed the other day. We didn't get nothing landed. I'm not sure about you guys. If you guys get way more snow than we do up by Canada.
Yeah. We're in the
Uh,
warning phase right now. Like, hey, it's coming. Be ready.
uh,
Get ready. Yep.
yeah. All right. Well, enjoy your day, bro. It's been great getting to know you and talking to you, and I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me today.
Appreciate it. This has been a good experience. I'm glad we could
Good,
make that happen. Yeah.
good man. I'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
All right, see ya.